What if the past knew more than we think? Imagine holding a small wooden bird carved thousands of years ago and realizing it has the aerodynamics of a modern glider, or staring at an ancient stone disc, its surface etched with spirals and symbols that seem to tell a story not of gods, but of visitors from the stars. These aren't fragments of fiction. These are real artifacts, documented, studied, debated, and yet they remain unsolved. They stand as silent rebels against the clean timelines and polished narratives found in history textbooks. We've always trusted science to explain our world. But every so often, we find something science can't quite explain. Something too old, too advanced, or simply too strange. And when that happens, one of two things usually follows. Either it's dismissed, or it's buried. But what if we've been looking at history upside down? Today's video isn't just about ancient objects. It's about the gaps in our knowledge. It's about the unanswerable questions. And for those who've seen the world change, especially those of you who've watched spaceflight evolve, technology explode, and secrets slowly unravel over decades, this journey might feel eerily familiar. Because this isn't the first time authorities said, "That's just a myth," and it won't be the last. For older viewers in particular, the generation that remembers watching the moon landing on a black and white TV, or flipping through Life magazine to see breakthroughs that were later debunked, you know better than most, that not everything is what it seems, that behind every official explanation, there might be a page missing from the book. In this episode of Uncharted Mysteries, we'll explore 5 ancient puzzles that science still can't definitively explain. From gliding birds buried in tombs to mysterious batteries dug from the desert, each one raises a simple but profound question. What did our ancestors know that we've forgotten? We'll travel from the deserts of Mesopotamia to the icy coasts of Japan. We'll visit temples, tombs, and the bottom of the sea. And through it all, we'll ask the question no one dares to write into history books. Could it be that we're not the most advanced humans to ever live? Just the latest? So, if you're ready to question what you've been told and open your mind to what's been hidden, then subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and stay with us to the very end. Because the final mystery we'll reveal tonight is one that even seasoned historians are afraid to talk about. Let's begin. In 1898, deep within a tomb at Saqqara, the vast necropolis of the ancient Egyptian capital of Memphis, archaeologists unearthed something curious. Amid the usual finds, amulets, wooden statues, and pottery was a small wooden figure. It was carved in the shape of a bird, only about 7 inches long, with wings curved slightly downward and a tail unlike any seen on birds of the Nile. At first glance, it looked like just another votive offering. But decades later, when aviation experts examined it more closely, their reaction was far from casual. This bird had no feathers etched into its body. It had no legs for perching. Most strangely, it had a vertical tail. Fin, something no known bird species possesses. But every modern aircraft does. Some began to ask a dangerous question. Was the Saqqara bird not a bird at all, but a model of a flying machine? Let's look at the shape more closely. The wings are swept back slightly, and their proportions bear a striking resemblance to modern gliders used in aerodynamic research. The fuselage is narrow, and the vertical tail, if fitted with a horizontal stabilizer, now possibly missing, would complete the necessary structure for flight. In 2002, an Egyptian archaeologist and aviation engineer named Dr. Khalil Messaha suggested that the artifact had clear aerodynamic features. He recreated a model based on the original and added a small horizontal stabilizer, where it may have broken off. When tested in a wind tunnel, the model glided. It didn't soar like a jet, but it glided well enough to raise eyebrows. Even more surprising, in 2006, a team from Colombia built a scaled-up remote-controlled version of the Saqqara Bird, and it flew. This begged the question, if the ancient Egyptians carved such an object, did they merely stumble upon aerodynamics by accident, or were they experimenting with a form of flight mainstream scholars were quick to dismiss the idea. Many claimed it was likely a toy or perhaps a ceremonial object, symbolic rather than scientific. They pointed to the lack of written records discussing flight or anything resembling aircraft in Egyptian texts, but defenders of the flight theory argue the Egyptians were masters of symbolism, architecture, and precision engineering. If anyone could embed advanced knowledge into seemingly mundane objects, it would be them, and there's precedent for such thinking. Legends from other ancient cultures speak of flying machines, Vimanas in Hindu mythology, or the Greek myth of Icarus and Daedalus building wings of wax and feathers to escape imprisonment. These stories, often cast as allegory, carry strangely technical descriptions. Glowing chariots, cities in the sky, mechanical birds. Were they just dreams of flight or distorted memories of something real? The Saqqara Bird sits in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, labeled simply wooden bird model. No plaque mentions its aerodynamic potential. No sign invites speculation, but it's there, silent, waiting. Some believe it was a child's toy, thrown into a tomb for sentiment. Others suspect it could have been a ceremonial object, perhaps tied to the soul's flight to the afterlife. But then there's a third possibility, more unsettling, that it was a scale model of something real, something bigger. The ancient Egyptians were capable of astonishing feats. They moved multi-ton blocks across deserts, aligned temples with celestial precision, and built structures we still don't fully understand. Why wouldn't they have dabbled in the dream of human flight? And if this small wooden bird was a prototype, where's the full version? Or better yet, where's the pilot? It's easy to scoff at the idea of ancient aircraft, but just over a century ago, the idea of powered flight was still ridiculed. The Wright brothers hadn't even left the ground. And yet, there it was, a bird from 2,000 years earlier, shaped not like any known avian creature, but like something sketched from a 20th century hangar. Could ancient engineers have discovered flight and lost it? If so, what caused that knowledge to vanish? Was it buried with the fall of dynasties? Lost in floods, fires, or invasions? Or worse, was it deliberately hidden, protected from those who wouldn't understand? Dr. Messaha once proposed the idea that the Egyptians had gliders capable of short-distance flights, possibly launched from cliffs or tall structures. While that may sound fantastic, it's worth remembering that Da Vinci's flying machines were also dismissed until modern reconstructions showed they could theoretically work. So, was the Saqqara bird simply a beautiful mistake? A toy lost to time? Or was it a silent fragment of something far more advanced? A message carved in cedar, hinting at a skybound history erased from the record? Whatever the truth, this little wooden bird has managed to do something incredible. It has forced us to question the limits of our ancestors and our assumptions. And if they could fly, what else did they know? Stay tuned. The next artifact might just rewrite everything. In the remote and mist-laden highlands of China's Bayan Mountains, near the Tibetan border, lies one of the most controversial stories in archaeological history, one that some say was quietly erased and others insist was never real to begin with. It begins in 1938, when a Chinese professor named Chi Puti supposedly led an expedition of archaeologists into a series of deep, interconnected caves in the mountains. While searching for evidence of ancient human habitation, they stumbled upon something unexpected: neatly arranged rows of stone discs buried in the dirt and embedded into the cave walls, some partially hidden behind natural rock formations. They weren't ordinary stones. Each disc was about 9 inches in diameter, with a perfectly round hole in the center, almost like a record or wheel. But what stunned the researchers was the fine, spiral grooves that wound outward from the center toward the rim. On closer examination, these grooves weren't just decoration. They were tiny, almost microscopic carvings, symbols, glyphs, or writing of some unknown language. What the team allegedly found that day were hundreds of these stone discs. And according to the legend that followed, the world never looked at history the same way again. These would become known as the Dropa Stones. Years later, in the early 1960s, a Chinese scientist named Dr. Tsumam Nui at the Beijing Academy for Ancient Studies claimed to have deciphered the symbols. His translation, if true, would be among the most explosive discoveries in human history. According to Dr. Tsum, the spiral text told the story of a spacefaring people, beings from another world, who crash-landed on Earth around 12,000 years ago. Their spacecraft, crippled by damage, had fallen into the mountains. With no way to repair their vessel, the survivors sought refuge in the caves. But what they found were not allies but hostility. The indigenous people, referred to as the Ham tribe, were frightened by the newcomers and drove them into hiding. The Dropa, as the extraterrestrial visitors called themselves, lived in isolation, some perishing in the foreign environment, others eventually coexisting with the local people. The stones, the translation claimed, were records of their journey, survival, and eventual integration into the human population. The glyphs described the stars they came from, their ship's journey, and their plea for help that never arrived. It was the kind of story tailor-made for modern mythos: aliens in ancient times, buried records of contact, and a cover-up stretching across decades. But then the story gets murkier. Dr. Tsumam Nui's translation was never published in any peer-reviewed journal. In fact, the Beijing Academy denied any such researcher ever existed. The Dropa stones themselves vanished from public view. The Chinese government, when asked by Western reporters, claimed no knowledge of any such expedition or artifacts. Photographs surfaced later, grainy images of a man holding a disc-shaped object with a hole in the center and faint spiral markings. But were these photos of the original Dropa stones, or cleverly crafted fakes? In the 1970s, Austrian engineer and author Erich von Däniken, who popularized the ancient astronaut theory, referenced the Dropa stones as potential evidence that extraterrestrials had visited Earth long before recorded history. But even he admitted the lack of hard documentation made the story difficult to prove. Skeptics argue that the entire saga is a hoax, that the story was invented, perhaps in the 1960s, during the height of UFO fascination. They point to the absence of any solid archaeological record, museum inventory, or verifiable peer-reviewed research. And yet, the idea won't die. In 1995, a man named Hartwig Hausdorff, a German researcher and traveler, claimed to have seen the stones at a small Chinese museum in Xi'an. He said they were stored away from the public and that museum officials were evasive when asked about their origin. Shortly afterward, he reported that the stones were removed and the museum denied ever having them. So what's going on here? Could the Dropa stones be real artifacts, quietly suppressed to avoid upheaval in our historical understanding? Or are they part of a well-orchestrated myth, a cautionary tale about believing too much? Interestingly, the Dropa story echoes something found in other ancient cultures. Legends from the Dogon tribe in Mali describe sky visitors from the star Sirius who shared advanced astronomical knowledge. Native American Hopi tales speak of the ant people, beings from beneath the earth who came after a cataclysm. And in Mesoamerican records, there are mentions of serpent-like beings descending from the sky to bring knowledge to humankind. Why do so many cultures have sky gods, star visitors, and mysterious helpers descending from the heavens? Is it merely symbolic storytelling? Or is there a long-forgotten event, something real, that echoes through time as myth? And let's return to the stones. Could stone have been the chosen medium for a message designed to last? After all, paper burns, metal rusts, but stone endures. If a ship from another world truly crashed into our mountains thousands of years ago, wouldn't they try to leave a record in the most durable form available? Some believe the Dropa story was crafted to test public reaction to the idea of ancient contact. Others suggest the symbols on the stones, if they exist, were misunderstood ancient script, perhaps Proto-Tibetan or even symbolic storytelling misunderstood by outsiders. But there's another theory, too, one less discussed. What if the story of the Dropa stones is true, but we've been told it's a hoax to avoid confronting a truth we're not ready for. What if contact with other civilizations far older than us has already happened, and like the Saqqara Bird, the proof has been sitting under our feet for centuries? Could the Dropa stones be the first recorded alien message in human history? Or are they an elaborate deception, one that succeeded in getting us to look, but perhaps in the wrong direction? The caves of Bayan Karula remain largely unexplored, remote and shrouded in cloud. And somewhere, if you believe the story, dozens, perhaps hundreds, of carved stone discs still wait, spinning in silence, etching a message we've forgotten how to read. And maybe, just maybe, we've already made contact, but we didn't recognize the message when we saw it. Beneath the shimmering waters of the Pacific Ocean, just off the southern coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan, lies a submerged structure that has sparked decades of controversy and curiosity. It's a massive stone formation that some believe to be the remnants of a long-lost civilization, possibly the oldest ever known. Others argue it's nothing more than a natural formation shaped by millennia of currents and tectonic shifts. But when you see it, it's hard not to wonder. Discovered in 1986 by a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake while searching for new scuba spots, the Yonaguni Monument sits about 25 meters underwater. What he stumbled upon was not coral, not a sunken shipwreck, but something that looked uncannily like a man-made structure. Rectangular platforms, wide terraces, straight edges and 90-degree angles, stair-like steps leading to elevated flat surfaces, pillars, trench-like passageways, and what looks like a massive stone staircase carved right into the side of a submerged mountain. To the untrained eye, it resembles a sunken temple, a ziggurat, a forgotten pyramid now resting silently under the sea. Japanese marine geologist Dr. Masaaki Kimura was among the first scientists to explore and study the site. And what he saw, he says, changed his understanding of history forever. Kimura believes the Yonaguni Monument is the remnant of a man-made city, one that sank over 10,000 years ago, possibly during the last ice age when rising sea levels swallowed coastlines worldwide. According to his surveys, the monument is more than 150 meters long and 40 meters wide. He has documented stone pillars, roads, drainage, channels, even what appears to be a stadium-like area and an altar at the very top. And most intriguing of all, Kimura claims to have found what looks like symbols or pictographs carved into parts of the structure, along with distinct tool marks suggesting the stone was shaped intentionally. But not everyone agrees. Many geologists, especially those from the West, argue that the structure is the result of natural processes. The region is composed mostly of sandstone and mudstone. Mudstone, which naturally fracture into right angles when subjected to tectonic activity and erosion. They claim what looks like stairs or pillars are merely illusions. Pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns in random formations. One such skeptic, geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University, has dived at Yonaguni and concludes that although the site is fascinating, it is likely natural. He admits some features are unusual, but maintains they could have formed through natural faulting and wave erosion. So who's right? Supporters of the monument's artificial origin point to more than just its geometry. They highlight how the structure's orientation aligns with cardinal directions, its consistent step heights, and sharp lines that are difficult to explain through natural fracturing alone. Some divers have also reported features resembling roads connecting different parts of the formation and even remnants of what might be walls and gates. And then there's the timeline. If the Yonaguni Monument truly is a man-made structure, it would have been constructed when this area was still above sea level at least 10,000 years ago, possibly more. That places it well before the emergence of known civilizations like Sumer or Egypt. This raises an unsettling question. Who could have built it? There are no historical records of an advanced Japanese or Pacific Island civilization that predates written history by so many thousands of years. And yet, the Yonaguni structure stands in silent contradiction to that assumption. This is where the theories stretch beyond accepted history and into the realm of the forbidden. Some researchers believe Yonaguni could be a remnant of a lost Pacific civilization, perhaps even part of the mythical continent of Mu. Mu is said to have been an advanced culture that existed in the Pacific Ocean before being destroyed in a massive cataclysm. Much like Atlantis, it's often dismissed as myth. But Yonaguni gives the myth form. And wait, others speculate a connection to Lemuria, another supposed lost civilization that spanned parts of Asia and the Indian Ocean. If such a culture once existed, it would explain the architectural sophistication seen not just at Yonaguni but in scattered megalithic ruins across Southeast Asia, Micronesia, and even India, structures that appear older and more complex than their supposed builders could have achieved. Let's not forget that the ocean holds 95% of Earth's unexplored territory. Entire cities could rest beneath the waves, forgotten by time and erased from history. Could Yonaguni be just the tip of a submerged empire? Adding to the mystery are artifacts found on nearby islands, stone tools, primitive sculptures, and oddly shaped megaliths that may support the theory that an ancient maritime culture once thrived in this region. The Ryukyu Islands, where Yonaguni sits, were once home to ancient peoples long before written records began. Could these tools be their legacy? And what about the pictographs? Dr. Kimura claims to have found characters similar to those of the Kaida script, a writing system used by Okinawan cultures thousands of years ago. But no definitive translations exist. Could this be a proto-language lost in the flood? Despite decades of research, there is no consensus. The Japanese government does not fund further exploration. Major archaeological institutions remain silent. The site receives little international attention, yet divers from around the world still flock to Yonaguni, seeking answers beneath the sea. The debate continues: natural wonder or man-made enigma? But here's the thing, natural or not, Yonaguni is forcing us to confront the limits of our historical timeline. Challenges our assumptions about the capabilities of ancient humans. If they built such structures underwater, it suggests a mastery of stonework and architecture far earlier than we're taught. And if Yonaguni is indeed a man-made city swallowed by the sea, what else lies beneath the oceans, waiting to be found? Could the myths of Atlantis, Mu, and Lemuria be rooted in real, sunken memories of entire civilizations lost in the rise of the oceans? As we dive deeper, literally and figuratively, into the mysteries of Yonaguni, one thing becomes clear: the ocean is not just a frontier of nature, it may be a vault of forgotten human history, and perhaps it's a history we were never meant to rediscover. Buried beneath the sands of modern-day Iraq, a strange artifact was unearthed in 1938 near the village of Kujut, Rabu, just outside Baghdad. At first glance, it looked like little more than an old clay jar, unremarkable among the many relics of the Parthian era around 200 BCE. But when archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig took a closer look, he noticed something odd. Inside the clay jar was a copper cylinder, and within that an iron rod. The pieces were corroded, suggesting that some kind of liquid had once been present. It didn't take long before Koenig proposed a bold, almost unthinkable idea. What he had found, he believed, was a battery, an ancient battery. That single hypothesis would ignite decades of speculation, skepticism, and wonder. Let's break it down. The so-called Baghdad Battery is about 5 inches tall. The clay pot houses a tightly rolled copper sheet which encloses an oxidized iron rod. The pieces don't touch, and both are sealed in place with bitumen, a type of natural asphalt used for waterproofing in the ancient world. The design is precise, functional, even when modern researchers filled replicas with acidic liquids like lemon juice, vinegar, or grape juice, something remarkable happened. The devices generated a small electric charge. Not much, a volt or two at most, but enough to raise eyebrows and open a vast realm of speculation. So, if this was indeed a battery, what was it used for? Theory 1. Electroplating. One of the most popular ideas is electroplating. In this process, a metal object is coated with a thin layer of gold or silver using electricity. Could the Mesopotamians have used the Baghdad Battery to gild religious idols or ceremonial jewelry? Some point to ancient artifacts with exceptionally fine gold plating and suggest they may have been created using a technique that required more than fire and hammer. They argue that the voltage generated by several Baghdad batteries connected in series could power such a process. Yet no ancient electroplating workshops have been discovered. No instruction manuals, no schematics, just the jars. Still, the possibility remains tantalizing. Theory 2. Religious or medicinal use. Others believe the batteries were used for religious or medicinal purposes. Perhaps the charge was used for ritual shocks to create sensations that would be interpreted as divine. We know that ancient priests often used hidden mechanisms like echo chambers or smoke effects to impress worshippers. A mild jolt from a mysterious object could easily be interpreted as the touch of the gods. In this context, the battery becomes more than a tool. It becomes a symbol, a device of awe. Theory 3. Forgotten science. A more fringe but fascinating theory is that the Baghdad Battery was part of a larger technological framework that has since been lost to time. If ancient engineers had stumbled upon the principles of electricity, even in crude form, it suggests they were far more advanced than history typically credits. And the Baghdad Battery might not be alone. Consider the dendrolite, a depiction in an Egyptian temple that some believe shows a bulb-like device connected to a power source, or Roman concrete, which is more durable than most modern mixtures and still puzzles engineers today. Then there's the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device used to predict astronomical events with surprising precision, essentially a bronze analog computer from 100 BCE. These examples don't prove an ancient technological age existed, but they do raise a critical question: are we underestimating the ingenuity of ancient civilizations? The skeptic's view. Mainstream archaeologists are largely unconvinced. They argue that while the battery does produce electricity, it may have been accidental, not intentional. After all, storing scrolls or sacred relics inside containers with metallic linings was not uncommon. The corrosion, they say, is natural, explained by time and environmental exposure. Some even claim that Koenig misunderstood what he found. The jar might have been a storage vessel or an early medical tool, but not a battery. And the lack of corroborating evidence, like wires, conductors, or descriptions of electrical knowledge, makes the battery claim speculative at best. Yet these counterpoints only deepen the mystery. Could we be rediscovering ancient knowledge? Electricity wasn't officially discovered until the 18th century, and yet here lies a potential device from 2,000 years ago that demonstrates a basic understanding of its principles. That should, at the very least, make us pause. Some researchers point to the idea of cyclical knowledge, that civilizations may rise, discover technologies, and collapse before leaving behind only fragments of their knowledge. The Baghdad Battery could be such a fragment, proof of a forgotten scientific lineage. And this idea resonates with many older viewers, especially in the West. For those who grew up watching the moon landing, seeing the birth of the computer age, and now living through artificial intelligence, the rate of advancement is astonishing. But what if progress isn't always forward? What if we are merely rediscovering what was once already known? Could the Baghdad Battery be evidence that history is not linear, but layered? Final thought. The truth is, we may never know the exact purpose of the Baghdad Battery. Could be a misunderstanding, or it could be a doorway into a deeper understanding of our past. What we hold in museums today as oddities or novelties might one day be recognized as the early sparks of lost technologies, and that possibility that we are standing atop the ruins of ancient brilliance should make us question not just what we've forgotten, but what else lies just beneath the surface, waiting to be rediscovered. Deep in the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, land of temples, ziggurats, and the earliest known writing, an enigmatic clay tablet was uncovered. At first glance, it appeared to be a royal list, the kind scribes often kept to record lineages and important reigns. But upon translation, it revealed something utterly bizarre. The Sumerian King List is a cuneiform inscribed artifact discovered in various copies across sites like Larsa, Nippur, and Eridu. Dating back to the 3rd millennium BCE, the most complete version was found in the early 1900s in the ancient city of Larsa. It lists dozens of kings and their reigns over Sumer, and some of those reigns stretch the imagination beyond its breaking point. Consider this: Alulim, the first king of Eridu, the city where kingship descended from heaven, is said to have ruled for 28,800 years. The next king reigned for 36,000 years, another for 43,200 years, and this pattern continues for a number of rulers. Only later, after a supposed great flood, do the reigns become more plausible, closer to lifespans we would recognize today. So what is going on here? Is the Sumerian King List a literal record of kings who somehow lived for thousands of years? A mythological tale, passed down in poetic exaggeration? Or is it something more, an encoded memory of a time so distant, so foreign, that we've since buried it beneath layers of disbelief, kings of fantasy, or forgotten reality? To some scholars, the list is nothing more than political mythology, a literary attempt to connect cities and rulers in a divine narrative. The early, fantastical reigns serve to emphasize the superiority and sacred nature of kingship itself. After all, if a king ruled for 36,000 years, surely he was no mere man. But the line blurs. Why? Because some kings on the list are historically verified. Archaeological evidence and other inscriptions confirm that certain later rulers, like Gilgamesh of Uruk, were real people. This creates a strange blend of fact and fiction in one document. It's not purely myth, nor is it purely history, the something in between, which raises the unsettling question: could the earlier names be distorted records of real figures, rulers of a pre-flood civilization whose deeds and lifespans became exaggerated through oral tradition? A global pattern, the antediluvian echo. The Sumerian King List isn't alone in speaking of ancient rulers who lived impossibly long lives. In the Hebrew Bible, Genesis chapter 5 describes patriarchs who lived for hundreds of years. Methuselah, famously, lived to be 969. Noah lived 950. Adam, 930. The Book of Enoch, excluded from the modern Bible, goes even further, suggesting angelic beings mated with humans, giving rise to giants and men of renown. These hybrid creatures ruled vast kingdoms before being wiped out in a global flood. In Greek mythology, the Golden Age describes a time when gods and demigods ruled the earth for eons, followed by a decline through Silver and Bronze Ages until modern, corrupted man emerged. In Indian mythology, the Satya Yuga, the first of 4 cycles, lasted 1.7 million years, populated by beings of immense wisdom and spiritual power. In Mesoamerican records, such as the Popol Vuh, several failed creations of humanity occurred before the current age. Even Plato's Atlantis, said to be a mighty empire that sank beneath the sea 9,000 years before his time, echoes this theme of a forgotten age, lost in disaster and silence. What we begin to see is a universal story, told through different cultures in different words. An ancient age of greatness, of long-lived rulers, advanced knowledge, and divine connections, followed by a fall, a flood, a reset. Were these reigns literal? It's difficult to accept reigns of 36,000 years at face value. Human biology simply doesn't allow for it. And yet, theories have emerged, some fringe, others fascinating. Some suggest the numbers are symbolic. The Sumerians used a base 60 numbering system, and some researchers propose that a misunderstanding or mistranslation could inflate the numbers. Others believe the numbers are intentionally encrypted, hidden references to celestial cycles such as the precession of the equinoxes or even an ancient calendar we no longer understand. Another theory? These kings were not entirely human. The phrase kingship descended from heaven isn't metaphorical for some ancient astronaut theorists. It's literal. They believe that these rulers were advanced beings, extraterrestrial or otherwise, who genetically engineered or ruled early humans for their own purposes. A more grounded but still compelling idea is that the King List is a deliberate manipulation, crafted by later dynasties, to legitimize their rule. By connecting themselves to divine or mythological rulers of the past, they could claim authority. It's political propaganda on a cosmic scale. The Great Reset. History rewritten? After listing 8 kings who ruled for a combined 241,200 years, the Sumerian King List reads, "Then the flood swept over. Everything changes after this line. Kingships are divided between cities. Lifespans shrink. The age of gods gives way to the age of men." This echoes the flood myth seen in over 200 cultures across the world. From Noah's Ark to the Epic of Gilgamesh, from the Deucalion of Greece to the Manu of India, each version describes a catastrophic flood that ended an age. Some scholars believe this is more than coincidence. The idea is simple and chilling. There was an age of advanced human or near-human civilizations before the flood. Then something catastrophic occurred. A comet? A pole shift? A sudden sea level rise? Whatever it was, it wiped the slate clean. Civilizations collapsed. Survivors, if any, passed down garbled memories. Through myth, carving them into stone tablets, singing them in creation hymns. And eventually, they became stories, myths, fairy tales. But what if they weren't? What if the flood was real and the long-reigning kings were real, and the real conspiracy is that we are taught not to take them seriously? What don't we remember because we weren't allowed to? The Sumerian King List raises a powerful philosophical question. What if memory itself has been curated? If history is written by the victors, what happens when time itself is the victor? Were the first kings of Earth long-lived, godlike beings? Were their years misunderstood astronomical symbols? Or were they simply men, real men, whose story was warped across the ages? Whatever the truth, this artifact challenges us to question everything we know about time, rule, and the nature of our past. Perhaps the King List isn't just a record of rulers. Maybe it's a warning that history as we know it is not only incomplete, but carefully, deliberately designed to keep certain truths buried. And if that's true, what else are we not allowed to remember? So now we return to the surface, having unearthed fragments of our forgotten past. A wooden bird that might have flown long before Da Vinci dreamed of wings. A stone disk that whispers of visitors from beyond the stars. Sunken monument shaped with impossible precision beneath the sea. A clay jar that might have sparked ancient electricity. And a king list that dares to claim rulers once lived for tens of thousands of years. Each mystery stands on its own. A puzzle piece carved in stone, submerged in oceans, or encoded in ancient text. But viewed together, they ask a far more powerful question. What have we lost? And why? None of these artifacts are hearsay. They exist. They have been photographed, tested, cataloged, and yet they remain unsolved. Experts debate them, skeptics dismiss them, and believers point to them as proof that our timeline is broken. But no one can definitively say what they are or why they exist. Some will call them coincidences, the result of nature, misunderstood symbolism, or ancient human error. But others see clues, markers left behind, perhaps unintentionally, by civilizations who once walked the earth with knowledge we can't explain. And in that tension lies the heart of the mystery. The truth is, history isn't a straight line. It's a fragile story, one shaped by the survivors, edited by the powerful, and retold by those who were never there. What we call progress might simply be relearning what was once forgotten. For those of you who are older, perhaps 65 or beyond, you've seen the world shift more than most. Technologies rise and vanish. Certainties collapse. You remember when we looked at the stars and wondered. Now we ask our phones instead. But what if our ancestors were more like us than we think? Curious, inventive, capable of wonders, and of losing them. If knowledge was lost once, could it be lost again? Or worse, is it already slipping through our fingers? These ancient mysteries aren't just archaeological footnotes. They're warnings. The past does not stay buried. Resurfaces, often when we least expect it. And when it does, it brings with it a choice. Dismiss what we don't understand, or question everything we think we know. If you've felt that chill, that pull toward the unexplainable, then you're exactly where you belong. Like this video if your curiosity hasn't been satisfied. Subscribe to Uncharted Mysteries by NUN and turn on the bell, because the next questions are even darker. Comment below with your theory. Which mystery feels the most real to you? Which one still keeps you up at night? And finally, don't stop here. Watch more stories in our Uncharted Mysteries playlist. The deeper we dig, the more we uncover. And not all of it wants to be found, because some truths weren't lost. They were hidden, on purpose.